Alright, what is up, YouTube? Pink Ruby here, back with more Let's Play Golden Sun. So in the last part, we finally finished off with, like, the introduction of the story and setting up why it is we need to go on a journey to save the world. And even though I said that that was all the prologue and all the story stuff that we had to deal with, there's actually one other thing, and we're about to do it right here. Alright, and with that, we've collected our first of the elemental Djinn. This is Flint. Each Djinn has a name, and each Djinn does something different. Well, actually, every Djinn does the same thing, but also each one has one specific thing that they do different. And now he's going to teach us how to use Djinn, which is annoying. Not really going to explain any of this because I want to talk about the Djinn system on its own. Bonk. This takes so long and it's so annoying. But you're getting to see the basics of it. Never say no to that. If you ever say no to that, you're just fucked, guys. Alright, so with that, we actually get our first Djinn, Flint. Okay, so... Oh, actually, before I do this, I should also point out, from the end of the last episode. So I equipped the catch beads to Isaac, and now Isaac can use catch psi energy. It has nothing in battle, it's only outside of battle. However, you can give those and equip them on anyone. So if I had given them to Garrett, Garrett would then have it. I am going to give Garrett the Mars Star, though, just because. Alright, so I just want to talk about Djinn for a moment. Because Djinn are sort of a point of contention for me when it comes to this game. And it's really a personal thing more than anything else, because I can understand why everything is why it is, and I can understand why people would like the way it is, and like all of that stuff. But for me personally, I don't think it's implemented quite as well as it could be. So, as you saw through that little cutscene battle there, Djinn can be used in battle, and they can be used in two ways. They can be used as an individual Djinn, each with their own specific ability. Like Flint is just an earth attack. There are a bunch of different Djinn, and they can do a bunch of different stuff. Some of them buff, some of them debuff, some of them have special effects that you can't get anywhere else outside of those Djinn. Some of them are just basic attacks. Some of them are attacks that have secondary effects. There's all kinds of stuff like that. And then obviously you can also summon, but summoning isn't done with just one Jin. It was just shown now with one because that's all we have. If you have multiple Jin that are set, or I'm sorry, not set, standby. Set is when nothing has happened yet. When you have multiple Jin that are in standby, you can access summons that are stronger. So in this first game, there is no cross summons that require different elements. It's all just 1 earth, 2 earth, 3 earth, 4 earth, 1 fire, 2 fire, etc. for each element. And summons are very strong. They're incredibly strong, and the reason they're incredibly strong is because the damage they deal is... how should I put it? They deal linear damage. They're like, well, okay, they deal linear damage plus a sort of random amount of damage based off your actual stats. And what that linear damage is changes in between the games for the specific summons that are in this game. Like, the strongest summon in this game gets weaker in the second game, but basically, like, if you use a summon, it deals a percent of the enemy you use its health just is gone. It deals that enemy that much percent of its health in damage plus a little bit of extra. The strongest summon that you can get in the second game that requires a ton of set Jin or standby Jin in 2 different elements does like 80% and also fully heals and revives your entire party. So summoning is obviously very strong. And also, as I said, the actual individual Jin abilities are very strong because a lot of them are things you can't get anywhere else. Like I said, like there are Aura Jin that put up a defensive barrier that for 1 turn that causes you to take basically no damage. It's another thing where it just decreases the amount of damage you take by a percent. Where the weakest and the worst one is one you actually get in the second game, and it does like it's still 50% damage reduction, and the best one is like 90%. So like that's the Jin. The problem is this. So maybe you saw it. You can see it right here. If I set this Jin, I lose the bonus stats that having that Jin equipped gives me. And I can understand why. That's not actually a huge problem. So each individual Jin you get on a character increases their stats. When they're set, ready to be summoned, you lose those stats. Likewise, after they've been summoned and they're in recovery mode, you still do not have their stats. You only get their stats when they're in standby. And like I said, I understand why this is, because if the stats did not drop, you would be able to just throw out summons like right at the beginning of a battle with literally no repercussions. Or you could use every Jin in your inventory, like in your that it's equipped to your character with no repercussions whatsoever. So you just have access to all of these incredibly strong attacks that you could just use with no downside whatsoever. And then immediately go into summons too. Like that's insane, because when you use a Jin in battle, it also puts it in set mode. That's the thing. This is not a problem. The real problem comes from the fact that character customization and classes require Jin. So if I just, and spoilers, this is what I'm going to do. If I just use the same element Jin on, each individual character. So Isaac being a Venus Adept, if he will get all Venus Jin. They go along just a general, they go a Venus, essentially, a pure Venus. He'll be a pure Venus unit. Like, that's his class. I can't remember what the final class is that he can reach. Like, it's level dependent. It's level and Jin, number of Jin equipped dependent. That's what's important. However, if there are specific classes that you can only get by having specific types of Jin equipped, so like if Isaac has, I think it's 3 Earth and 4 Mars Jin, he becomes a ninja or a samurai. I can't remember which one it is. There's some that require 3 different elements, like 1 Jupiter, 2 Mars, and then the rest Venus, and it'll give him a specific class. And depending on what your class is, you get different psi energies and you get different stats. It vastly affects your stats. Even just having the same element vastly changes your stats if you have 7 Jin all set on one unit, on one character. The problem is, if you want to use those classes, you can no longer use the Jins or the summons. For a couple different reasons. One, having all of your Jins set or in recovery loses a tremendous amount of stats, and especially late in the game when they are reclassing you. Again, even if you're just doing the same element, you will lose classes, and when you lose those classes, you lose massive stat bonuses that come with them. It makes you much weaker. It's not as big of an issue in this game because you'll never really want to set more than 4 anyway, because that's the most you can use for a summon. But in the next game, it becomes a much bigger issue if you want to be using like the powerful summons. But even beyond that is, if you don't have the exact correct setup of Jin for a class, like I said, like say I needed, like I said, 2 Mars, 1 Jupiter, 4 Venus for a specific class. If that's a class, I don't remember what it is. It just kind of popped in my head. And say I set the Jupiter Jin. I used its ability and now it's set. It's no longer in standby. I'm losing its stats. I lose not only the stats from it, I lose the class, because I obviously no longer have the correct number of Jin on standby, which means I lose all the class bonuses. But also, only having 2 Mars and 4 Venus isn't a class on its own, and it actually just makes you weaker overall. Because it doesn't give you the full stat bonuses that you would get from having just 6 Venus Jin. There's no class associated with it, so you're just weak. Incredibly weak. And I know this is sort of a long rant, but I need to sort of explain, one, why I'm going to be playing the way I am, which is, like I said, just the 7 Jin of the elements on each individual character, and why it is you won't really see me being reclassing, and why I think it's not a problem. Like, in my mind, I feel like you should always get, even if you lose the stat bonuses, you should always get the class from having the Jin equipped. Doesn't matter if they're in standby, doesn't matter if they're in set, doesn't matter if they're in recovery. As long as they are on your unit, you should have that class. The way it is now, you really can only play one of 2 ways. You can either use Jins and summons, which is what I like to do, or you can use the classes themselves, which is what Umbreon Mao, my friend Max, really likes to do. The reason I play the way I do is because I really like the Jin abilities. I actually like it significantly more than I like the summons. The summons are just sort of like a secondary thing that I like having access to. Especially once I get later in the game and once I get into the second game. You're not actually really going to see me use any of the big, powerful, incredibly overpowered summons. Maybe like 1 or 2, just because if it sets up that way, but even then you probably won't see much of it. But you will see me using the Jin themselves a lot, because I like doing that. But I couldn't do that if I wanted to reclass my units. And I get reclassing the units, like why Max likes doing it. You can get some crazy builds with like massive defense or huge attack stats and stuff like that. You can turn characters into literal undying walls, which, spoilers, you don't really need to reclass to do that if you've got the right equipment setup, but that's for later game. But yeah, that's like my big sort of like Jin rant. Because I do love this game, and I don't think it's like a big enough problem that like it really even hampers the game. And again, I don't even necessarily know that it's a problem, because like I said, I understand why they did it the way they did. Oh yeah, by the way, Vermin really like to defend. And their variants. You'll see recolors of them later. They do the same thing. But, like, yeah. Oh, cutscene, I forgot. You think you returned to Kayleigh. His strange powers will help him in search of the Raw. Alright. Man, this really reminds me of Tales of Symphonia music. Nod your head, walk into town. So this is Vault. Very small town, not a lot of stuff to do here, but as I said earlier, like I understand why the game is the way it is. Why they chose to have the Djinns work the way they did. The one thing I... Ow, 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 ow. I think I just cut myself with my nail while I was scratching my face. That really hurt. Ow, it's right under my eye. I'm gonna cry. It hurts. Anyway, I really do wish you would be able to keep your class changes when you set or put a Djinn into recovery. That's the only thing I could think to change, and it would definitely make the game better. One of the things I didn't really explain, I really didn't talk about otherwise too, is like, so say you're using a 3-element class. If one of, like I said, if you lose one of the Jupiter Djinn or whatever, and you lose your class, you lose all of that element's psi energies as well, because your psi energy really, like what you have access to, really relies heavily on the Djinn themselves. So, is that it? Huh. I don't think I realized this. I don't think I ever realized this guy had a psi energy stone in his house. Money. So yeah, that's my kind of like longish rant on the Djinn system. I don't hate it. You look weird. I don't hate it by any stretch of the means. It's not like awful. And it doesn't really affect, hey, I got a nut. Nut. It doesn't really affect how I play or how I would like to play. But I feel like the only reason that is because I've spent so much time playing like this. It's just sort of like natural to me. If I was a new player, it might bother me. Excuse me. Alright, let's go to the inn. Gotta go upstairs. So this Ivan, he's a weirdo. Let's go find this weirdo. Bro, you can't just read people's minds without their consent. I'm literally being mind raped. You just randomly ask some people you've never met before. All right. I'm thinking things about your sister, and you can't stop me. And with that, we gain our Jupiter Adept. Ivan. I forgot his name for a second. And I'm actually going to set Mind Read to one of the buttons, just because we're going to need it in a second. So you actually can read the mind of every single character in the game. The other magic he has is Whirlwind. I don't remember which Whirlwind. Because Whirlwind isn't Cyclone, if I remember correctly. Oh, the other thing is, I don't think he'll leave. Yeah, if I try and leave, he won't leave with me. Yeah. Oh, oops. Just trying to wipe something off the screen there. Ignore that. I might actually leave without him, just to level up Garrett and Isaac a bit, because they're kind of weak. Hat. Level 2 is not where they need to be right now, but... Okay, he already has one. They already have gloves. Although, shield is better than the gloves. This is one of the really smart things that not enough RPGs do, which is when you're buying and equipping. First, you can equip straight from the buy menu, and second, you can sell straight from the buy menu. So, Ivan's kind of interesting in that, like, half of his equipment is for females and half of his equipment is for males. Don't really know why that is. I guess it's just his, just want to make sure everyone has. Because he's sort of like a support mage class, they've decided he's feminine enough that that's what he gets. Alright, so... There's also some weapons. So, you'll probably never see repair. Artifacts are interesting. Generally, okay, so this one, see how this says staff unleashes Merc? Certain weapons have unleashes. They're different than critical hits, because you can also get actual critical hits. They're like special attacks that only those weapons can use. And they're not based off any individual stat, if I remember correctly, for unleash rates. Instead, each individual weapon has its own release rate, or its unleash rate, with some being much higher than others. Like the best weapon in the entire series from the second game, which is technically Excalibur. Sorry, guys who thought I was going to say the Soul Blade. its release rate is like 45% or something like that. The Soul Blade is like 70%, which is actually technically that makes the Soul Blade better because it's more consistent damage. But the Excalibur can deal higher damage because its Unleash can hit either 1 or 3 times. But yeah, so generally Unleashes are either just way more powerful attacks, or they have some sort of effect to go along with it. Like Merc, I don't remember what Merc does. I think it applies blindness. If I'm correct, if I remember correctly, it applies blindness. So any rare items you sell that like are one-offs you can't get anywhere else, along with the revive items, which are called Water of Lives and Psi Energy Stones. Both of those actually you can in fact get infinite supplies of them. It's kind of hard. You have to do this like gambling minigame to get it, but you can get more of them. But any of those items that you sell end up here, so they can be rebought later. Alright, I don't have a lot of money. So I'm actually going to... I think I'm actually going to end the part here, guys. I know it's kind of rude, because we didn't really do much. I just got the Jin, and then I got here, and we got Ivan, and I ranted about the Jin for 10 minutes, but I don't really want to make you guys sit through me grinding for a little while. I'm just going to grind Isaac and Garrett up to level 4, and then I'm going to come back. But in the next part, we're going to find Master Hammet's staff, and buy some new weapons, because theoretically I should have some more gold. So until then, guys, thanks for watching. This has been Pink Reaper, signing out.